Let's first talk about what it means by poverty. According to Professor Kaushik Basu at Cornell University, poverty is like trap that tends to persist. Using the term in economics, poverty or underdevelopment, broadly defined, is a state of equilibrium, and once you are trapped, you tend to stay there. In that sense, we say poverty is vicious, and we call it as the vicious circle of poverty, where a poor person, a poor family, poor country are circulated around the poverty today and still poor in the future. However, as the name trap suggests, one can escape from it as long as there is a strong external shock. What is that shock about and how do we achieve it? We'll discuss that in this course. Also, if poverty is important, its measurement will be also important as well. Actually, poverty can be measured by the percentage of population living on less than a poverty line. It is known as the headcount ratio, where HCR, which is that ratio, is simply Q divided by N, where the Q is the number of people living on less than the poverty line, and N is population size. The HCR is very simple and easy to measure, and at the same time, because of its simpleness, each country can easily manipulate these statistics to pretend that they are effectively handling the poverty problem. Again, we'll discuss it later. We'll also discuss what it means by poverty line, where we obtain such data by country. It is actually World Bank where you can download almost all data in international development, and I'll show you how and where to visit in the website. Now, before we move on to the next topic, inequality, let me go over growth a little bit because it is a sort of bridge linking poverty and inequality. Growth itself can be defined as an increase in the productive capacity, which normally comes from innovation. If you study macroeconomics, you will learn that an economy over time, where t is time, will fluctuate in the short run, meaning that like this. When vertical axis is Y income, the economy will fluctuate in the short run with booming and recession, but eventually will grow in the long run. And so far, many people have examined the determinants of growth. As an early pioneer, Harold and Domar, all the way in 1939, emphasized the role of savings in growth. 30 years later, in 1969, Robert Solow made an intuitive model known as the Solow growth model, saying that savings rates are important but leads to only temporary growth. And it is technical progress that is far more important for sustainable growth. For this contribution, Solow received Nobel Prize in Economics in 1987. In about 20 years later, three people, Kevin Murphy, Andre Schleifer, and Robert Vishny, made a very interesting model of the so-called big push as a determinant of growth, where an economy can escape from poverty trap and achieve industrialization through big push. What is the mechanism behind this will be discussed later when we deal with poverty part. Regarding empirical data of a country's growth rate, for example, South Korea's growth in year 2018, for example, again, the World Bank is an important data source to search for. So let's go deeper and find how poverty, growth, and inequality are interconnected with each other. When an economy is extremely poor, inequality level may not be very high because everyone is equally poor. If that economy experiences growth or an increase in the productive capacity, like we defined just a few minutes ago, this economy may escape from the poverty trap. Then, what makes growth? What makes the increase in the productive capacity? What is that? We call it innovation. Like typewriter. This new machine allowed people to speed up writing documents, or copy machine like Xerox, telegraph, automobile, locomotive, and smartphone. All nice examples of innovation all the way from the Industrial Revolution up to now that enabled us to significantly improve our productivity in many aspects. Then think about this. Who makes innovation? Does everyone make innovation? No. Innovation is special and unique because it comes from like one person or one small group of few people, like that. If it is coming from everyone, we don't call it innovation anymore. And it is natural to think that those who achieve innovation will get financial compensation as a reward. That means innovation is inherently disequalizing. Without that, there should be no incentive to work hard for innovation. Those of you who benefit from innovation do not want it to be diffused. They can claim property rights to impede diffusion, like as copyright for intangible goods and patent for tangible goods. There should be fundamental conflict between innovation and diffusion. For example, suppose a pharmaceutical industry spent a lot of money in R&D, research and development, and finally made a drug that works in non-curable diseases. Or like a vaccine that can finish the long-standing pandemic. The company will obviously get a lot of money and may ask for the protection of their secret recipe in the name of patent. Very interestingly, as more and more people pay attention to this innovation and its reward, pressure for diffusion gets higher and higher. You may say, I want to make the same thing as that guy is making. If that kind of pressure is dominant, a government may come up with redistribution policies like progressive taxation, or the patent that protected the pharmaceutical company may expire, which is the end of the monopoly power of the firm, and all other firms enter the market to make copycats or generics, and markets will go toward the perfect competition. The important fact is the diffusion process is inherently equalizing. So, which one is more important, innovation or diffusion? Innovation is obviously very important. Using the pharmaceutical company's examples, finding a secret recipe and making a new drug or vaccine saves a lot of people. And the financial profit the company makes will be reinvested for R&D to make another drug or vaccine to combat other diseases or pandemics. In that sense, their hard work should be respected and the intellectual property right should be protected. We can't simply blame them by taking lots of profits. But what if the person or company that achieved the innovation enjoy its monopoly power too much such that they produce too little and charge too high to maximize their own profit for a long time period? What if the company that developed a new drug or vaccine charge high price so that people from developing countries who can't afford the drug are dying. Then we certainly need to diffuse the innovation such that many people can benefit from it. So, the correct answer is both innovation and diffusion are important. We actually need both of them to maximize the increase in the society's productivity. For example, maintain patents only for certain years and allow other firms to enter the market and produce generics. The balance between innovation and diffusion is what a rational government should put forward. Anyway, summarizing all this, when the innovation takes place, it is inherently disequalizing. The inequality level will rise, and then after diffusion, which is inherently equalizing, the inequality level will naturally decrease. That is what Simon Kuznets argued, and it is officially known as the Kuznets Hypothesis. Inequality may rise initially, but will end up declining as a country's income level rises. For his contribution, Kuznets was awarded Nobel Prize in Economic Science in 1971. So, if the Kuznets hypothesis is true, we'll have a smooth inverted U shape, as you see here. Since Simon Kuznets published his idea in the early 1950s, there have been so many attempts to test it with the hope to find this inverted U curve. We can estimate this hypothesis either by time series analysis, tracking an individual country over time, or by cross-sectional analysis with many countries for a given time period. Or we can even use panel data known as cross-sectional time series, where we handle data for many countries for several years. With whatever approach we take, empirical results are not as successful as what Kuznets had anticipated. It's not U-shaped at least, but the observed curve is not smooth or symmetric inverted U either. We may call it mixed results. Why? What are some possible reasons? Maybe multiple innovation can outrun diffusion such that unequalizing forces may dominate equalizing forces. That could be one reason. As another reason, we can consider legal protections like copyright and patent that can be extended for several years. As a third reason, which is more like geographic reason, we may consider the so-called Latin effect, meaning that the countries in Latin America are not extremely poor or rich, but their inequality level are so high. So if we include those countries in the analysis, it's highly likely that we can find this inverted U pattern. Then the question is, why those countries in Latin America have higher inequality than others? We can look into the colonial roots and extractive institutions. Think about Latin America in 1500, like Inca Empire. Things were prosperous with rich resources and large population. When the Spanish people came in and colonized that part, the extractive institution was more profitable. They took out all these natural resources by forcing native people to work in mines or plantations, and only a few Spanish people, colonizers, were enjoying huge amount of wealth. That is one of the main culprits of high inequality of the region. Sad history. This is a big contrast to North America with poor resources and small population. Instead of extracting something, the British people developed institutions encouraging investment coming from right-based private property. instead of going back to their home country with the resources, they actually settled in and claimed, this is my land and my country. You guys, my friend in Britain and continental Europe, come to this land of opportunity. Get your own land. Come and invest like this. So, what matters is institution. Depending on whether it is extractive or it encourages investment by protecting individuals' property rights, the result is so different. If you're interested in this kind of idea, please read this book, Why Nations Fail. You can read this book translated in Korean too. So many interesting examples and insights in this thick book. The author, Daron Acemoglu, is a well-known institution economist. The main idea of this book is based on his earlier publication titled Reversal of Fortunes that nicely captures the reason why the resource-rich Latin America in 1500 is not as rich as current North America. They did not have abundant resources at that time. There are many other books that directly examine or criticize the Kuznets curve and inequality, written by renowned scholars like Milanovic, Scheidel, and Piketty, and so on. We'll discuss some of their book chapters in inequality part of the lecture. This is the map showing the trend of inequality by country. We'll discuss later how to define and measure the Gini coefficient, but as I mentioned right before, countries in Latin America are overall very unequal, together with some sub-Saharan African countries. South Korea looks okay, but if we see the time series data over the past 2 decades, its growth rate of inequality is very high, which is a concern in this country. Then you may be curious, where can you get such data? Again, the answer is World Bank's World Development Indicator. It's like a treasure box, and if you go to this website and search for keywords or directly type its code, you can find Gini coefficient by country, by year, and download it in an Excel file. Of course, it's all free. I'll show you later where to go and how to get it.